For centuries, Europe has been imagined as a land of ancient, isolated tribes, people who had lived there since the Ice Age, since the age of mammoths and cave paintings, a single, unbroken lineage stretching back into prehistory. But ancient DNA has shattered that illusion. Today, scientists can read the genomes of humans who lived tens of thousands of years ago, and what they've uncovered tells a far more complex story than anyone expected. A story not of isolation, but of constant movement, replacement, and renewal. Modern Europeans are not the descendants of one ancient people. They are the product of three massive waves of migration that reshaped the continent over tens of millennia. And their origins stretch from Africa to Anatolia to the vast grasslands of the Eurasian steppe. The story begins more than 45,000 years ago when the first modern humans entered Europe. They were dark-skinned hunter-gatherers, following rivers north through the Middle East, carrying simple stone tools and an unyielding will to survive. Europe at the time was a brutal world. Ice sheets miles thick smothered much of the land. But in the south, where the ice loosened its grip, life endured. Mammoths, reindeer, wild horses, and the first modern Europeans. They were not alone. Another human species, the Neanderthals, had arrived hundreds of thousands of years earlier, perfectly adapted to the cold. When the newcomers arrived, the two groups met and interbred. Within a few thousand years, the Neanderthals vanished, but their legacy did not. Traces of their DNA still live on in modern Europeans. These early Europeans hunted, created cave art, and survived winters almost impossible to imagine. Around 27,000 years ago, their population may have fallen to just a few thousand individuals, yet they endured, retreating into southern refuges in France, Spain, and the Balkans. When the Ice Age began to fade, they followed the melting glaciers northward, forming small fishing communities and carving symbols into stone that still echo their presence. One such place was Lepenski Vir, along the banks of the Danube. Nearly 9,000 years ago, people there built trapezoidal homes, carved statues of half-fish, half-human beings, and lived almost entirely on river fish. For nearly 2 millennia, they thrived, until strangers arrived, carrying something entirely new: farming. Around 10,000 years ago, in what is now central Turkey, the world's first farmers emerged. At sites like Bonkuklu, people began cultivating early wheat varieties, emmer and einkorn, and herding sheep and goats. This was the dawn of the Neolithic revolution, and it would transform humanity forever.
At first, archaeologists believed farming spread through Europe as an idea, neighbor teaching neighbor. But DNA told a different story. When scientists extracted genetic material from skeletons buried beneath Anatolian clay floors, they made a startling discovery. These early farmers were direct ancestors of European farming populations hundreds of miles away. Farming didn't just spread, farmers migrated. They carried seeds, animals, traditions, and genes into Europe. They followed the Danube, sailed the Mediterranean coast, and slowly expanded across the continent. By 6000 BC, farming communities had reached nearly every corner of Europe, from Greece and the Balkans to Iberia, Britain, and beyond. They looked different, too. Unlike the darker hunter-gatherers, Anatolian farmers generally had lighter skin and dark eyes. They built permanent villages, cultivated fields, raised livestock, and buried their dead beneath their homes. Yet for centuries, they lived largely apart from local hunter-gatherers. Two populations, two ways of life, side by side, but rarely mixing. Then, around 5,400 years ago, everything changed again. Across Europe, Neolithic settlements collapsed, villages were abandoned, populations declined sharply. There were no signs of widespread warfare, no burned cities or mass graves. And then, suddenly, a new people appeared, buried beneath enormous mounds, men laid to rest with stone battle axes in symbols of power. They came from the east. They were the Yamnaya, nomadic herders from the vast grasslands of southern Russia in Ukraine, the Eurasian steppe.
Masters of the horse and the wheel, they followed their cattle across endless plains. They built few permanent settlements, but raised monumental burial mounds for their leaders. Around 2800 BC, they began moving west. With them came wagons, horses, and a new language family, Indo-European, that would one day dominate much of the continent. From Serbia to Poland, archaeologists uncovered graves with the same distinctive customs. Men buried with weapons, women adorned with jewelry and animal teeth, children laid beside them in wooden chambers beneath the earth. DNA from these burials revealed something astonishing. People of the corded ware culture, long believed to descend from Europe's farmers, shared far more genetic ancestry with the Yamnaya. Their DNA even carried distant links to Siberia and to the ancestors of Native Americans. Within centuries, Yamnaya descendants had reached the British Isles, and as their genes spread, earlier populations disappeared. In regions like Germany and Britain, 70 to nearly 100% of the population was replaced. How did this happen?
One unsettling clue lay in their teeth. From more than 100 ancient skeletons across Europe, scientists detected traces of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the Black Death. This early form of plague may have devastated Europe's dense farming villages. The Yamnaya, already exposed, may have carried resistance. Their mobility and immunity may have given them a deadly advantage. Whether disease alone explains their expansion remains debated. But what is certain is that within a few centuries, the Yamnaya transformed Europe genetically, culturally, and linguistically. They ushered in the Bronze Age, forged metal weapons, domesticated horses, and reshaped society around movement and expansion. By the time Stonehenge was completed around 2500 BC, Britain's population had changed entirely. The farmers who began the monument were gone, their descendants replaced by newcomers from the eastern steppe. Yet this was not simply a story of conquest, it was another chapter in a much longer human journey. From the very beginning, Europe has been a crossroads. Each age brought new peoples, new skills, and new ideas. Stone tools and cave art, farming and herding, metal and the wheel, language and belief. Modern genetics shows that every European alive today carries echoes of all three ancient worlds: the Ice Age hunter-gatherers who first endured the cold, the Anatolian farmers who transformed landscapes into fields, and the steppe herders who rode west with horses and wagons. Each migration added a thread to the tapestry of Europe's identity, a story of adaptation, resilience, and constant change. From frozen caves to fertile plains, from roaming horsemen to modern cities, Europe has never stood still.